What's up, YouTube? It's been a little bit since I made a video, so I wanted to kind of give you guys an update on where things are at. I am still offering the customization and the conversions for people. So here is a mag pull that I am just finishing up for a gentleman, getting ready to get that shipped back out. And then, of course, here's my 6.5 Grendel wearing the Boyd stock with the same AK conversion. And then we have just the factory stock option that fits both the Gen 1 and the Gen 2, but it has to be the removable mag well. I've had several people lately who miss that and send it out to them, and then I end up having to refund them. They have to ship it back, and just creates headaches, but not that big a deal, but just something to be aware of. So took some family out prairie dog hunting this last week. We had a blast, had a really great time. I was hoping to get a bunch of footage and make a video of it, but that just didn't work out. But I did have some issues that kind of popped up. I've always had what I would call very heavy bolt lift on my 6.5 Grendel and never really paid any attention to it. But when we were out there prairie dog shooting, it really presented itself as a serious problem, and it made it much more difficult to stay on target. Take a shot, you have to make a correction because the bolt lift was so heavy, and I would say it almost required probably 35 to 40 pounds of force to cock it and open the bolt. And that's just when you're trying to stay on target, especially on a small target at extended ranges, that makes it impossible. So I'm gonna show you guys what I found and show you if you have the same issue, if you don't want to send it back to Ruger to get addressed, how to take care of it. So follow along, and if you have any questions, please let me know. I do want to give credit to somebody else on YouTube. He had some really good videos that were very helpful because I couldn't find a lot of the other things that I was looking for, and that is Viper 8049. He had a really good video on how to take this thing apart and put it back together. So I'm going to move this other stuff out of the way, and then I'm going to zoom in the camera so that way you have a more detailed view on what I'm getting ready to do. Okay, so what I was experiencing, I know a lot of people will say, oh, your headspace was off, you were shooting reloads or whatever the case may be. And I was shooting reloads, but these are reloads that have been tested and function checked in other weapons, and everything functions fine. There's no pressure signs or anything like that. And you could do this even just on an empty gun. Now this is empty, nothing in it. You could pull the trigger and you would have to manhandle this thing, just get a hold of it really good and force it open to get it to cock. That's not a very good thing to have to do in a hunting or any other scenario. It shouldn't be like that. So I took it apart, and the way you do this after you take your bolt out is you see the bolt shroud and the cocking lever here. You need to grab that and rotate it so that way it is in line with the bolt handle. Your bolt shroud will come off. That's what it looks like there. Usually when you take the bolt shroud off, you want all of this assembly to be all in one line. So one of the things that I looked at was that I was getting very, very heavy wear on this camming surface and this camming surface. A lot more than what should have been there. So that was a clue that something was going on. I took this apart and I polished everything, thinking maybe that it was just poor factory machining. And that helped a little bit, but not taking care of the problem. So I started digging deeper, and I will show you what I found. Now, this has not been a problem on my Gen 1 762 by 39, my Gen 2 762 by 39. I've got a Gen 1 6.5 Creedmoor. Not a problem with those, just on the 6.5 Grendel. So, and I've seen on forums where other people talk about this problem and other people are like, oh, it just must be you. No, I think that it's just something that gets past QC. It still functions fine. It just doesn't function like it should. So here's what you're gonna do. If you have the proper tool, which I highly recommend getting because it makes your life a lot easier, you put it in here, you flip the tool over, and it depresses the firing pin so that way you can disassemble it. You can do it with a flathead screwdriver. You put it into this back section here on the bottom, and once that gets loose, you can start fiddling with it to get the firing pin out. Now, the problem that I had was that this coil spring right here had the last two coils were flared out, and it was causing binding, really heavy binding on the inside of the bolt body. So it was requiring a lot more force to cock the rifle than it should have. So what I did to fix that was I disassembled my firing pin assembly, and I'll show you how to do that here in a second. I clipped off the last coil. Yeah, it was probably a coil and a half that was out of spec and had flared out. And once I did that, re-greased everything, put it back together, the required cocking force is about the same as my other rifles now. So it's a lot better. And I also polished things and cleaned things up, which I'm sure helped a little bit too. But I'm going to show you how to take this thing apart really quick. So armor's block is very helpful. So I'm actually going to pull this screwdriver out of this slot in the rear, and this will be in the fired position then. So now it is in the fired position. You know, you can't put it back together like this. We will have to put it back in the cocked position to reassemble everything. But you're going to take your armor's block, and whatever side is easiest to work with, take the appropriate sized roll pin punch, a hammer, and you're going to drive out this pin. Don't lose it. Set it to the side, and what you did is you drove that out of there. Now this, the cocking lever, is threaded on to the rear of the firing pin. Easiest way I found to take this off is put your firing pin down into your armor's block like that. Take an adjustable wrench, and you're going to slip it around this collar right here. And this requires a fair amount of force to compress this spring. And as you see, if you're not sitting on those ears, excuse me, the wrench will slip. But you're just going to push down a little bit, and then this unthreads very easily. Now, once you get this thing off, make sure you don't just drop this, because this is under a fair amount of tension. So that unthreads. You let that up slowly. You can pull off that component there. I'm not sure what the name of that is. Then you've got your firing pin spring. So all I did was I checked the diameter with some calipers of the spring, and the last little bit of coil that was out of spec, I just trimmed it off, took a file, smoothed it all up, cleaned everything up, re-greased it, put it back together. So the other thing I did is I polished the camming surfaces here and here, and in the bolt. So I just cleaned everything up. You do not want to remove material here. All you want to do is make it smooth, make it slippery. That just reduces friction, makes it easier to caulk. So to put this back together, put your spring back on. You're going to take this component and make sure that the piece that just has like a single ear goes towards the front. You're going to put that on there, put it in your block. If you have a block of wood with a hole in it, that works too. You're going to take your adjustable wrench and make it fit over that. Now what I have found is if you can try and keep that spring under that ear, it keeps things in better alignment when you go to put it together and requires less force. So you're going to take your caulking piece and screw this back on. And you would do this too if you were doing an aftermarket caulking piece from I think Anarchy Outdoors sells it, but I can't remember the name of the company that actually manufactures it. But they make a billet one that is a little less prone to breaking than the metal injection molded parts that Ruger makes. These work, they're great for mass production, but they have been known to break. Now, look inside your hole, make sure that the pin can line up or can drop into the hole. If not, you can depress it a little bit and back it off just a hair. It doesn't take much. All right, you can look through it, don't see any contact with anything, so we're gonna put the pin back in. And these are well machined, so the pins drive out and drive back in pretty easily. That's a sign that things are toleranced properly. So you want to make sure that the pin is just below flush on both sides, that way it doesn't create any drag on anything. Now, as you can see, we are in the released. That spring is pushing that all the way to the back, so we need to get it back to the cocked position so that we can reassemble our bolt. So again, put that on there. Put your adjustable wrench on. And then you're going to put your screwdriver or your tool in. If you have the tool, this is where it's a lot easier because it stays locked in there and you don't have to worry about it falling out. With a screwdriver, it does have a tendency to fall out, and I'd be surprised if I get this back together without it popping out on me at least once or twice. So reassemble your bolt handle back into the bolt. It only fits one way, so don't try to force it. If it doesn't fit, just keep playing, wiggling it around until you find where it drops in. Now when you put these components back together, there's a keyway in the bolt handle that the firing pin locks into. And if you don't get it into the correct position, when you put this back in your gun and you cock it, this thing will shoot out. So that's how you know whether or not you've got it locked back in correctly. So once you get it to here, you're just going to remove the screwdriver. You're going to make sure that things are in alignment, which right now they're not. So this caulking piece has to be in alignment with this to get the shroud back on. So you see how we're back in line with the bolt handle. We're going to take our shroud, slide it back on, and you're going to rotate it counterclockwise until you hear it click. Then take your rifle and function test it. You do that a few times and that thing doesn't shoot off the back, that means you got it put back together correctly. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is that if you modify that spring at all, you are modifying the trigger pull weight. Now, I had this set to about 3.5 pounds, maybe a little bit more before I did this modification. I'm going to show you what it's at now. So we cock it, it's ready to go. Zero out my trigger pull. So that's just under 2 pounds. That's a significant drop from just polishing components and correcting that spring. So if you do this kind of work, you need to test your gun and make sure that it's not going to surprise you. Do a drop test, make sure everything functions correctly before you go back out. But I hope this video will help somebody. It definitely was frustrating for me. It took me several hours of messing around with it last night and searching forums and videos to try and figure out exactly what was going on and how to correct it. But reach out to Ruger, see if they can fix your issue. If not, dive in and see if you can fix it yourself. But if you guys have any questions or you're interested in a conversion or anything, reach out to me. I'm gonna get the website updated hopefully before this video goes live, so that way it'll show the new Magwell with the extended mag release that now I've found, so that way I can offer that. Probably gonna throw some optics up there that I tried out and just wasn't a good fit for me for where I live, because I live out west, so I need a little bit higher optic power. But anyway, hope you guys are doing well. Hope everybody's safe and living the good life. Try to stay away from the crazies out there. I'll talk to you later.